August 28th, 1990, 3:28 in the afternoon. Plainfield, Illinois. A Tuesday sky turned black in moments, and then the world ended. Winds reaching 260 miles per hour tore a high school apart from foundation to sky, reducing brick homes to bare concrete slabs in the blink of an eye. 29 people perished in under 30 minutes. But the most terrifying detail was this. The storm core hid inside a wall of rain so thick that truly no one saw the danger approaching. Forecasters, local spotters, and families eating late lunches in their kitchens remained unaware, which meant alarms never sounded. What actually happened when nature broke every rule humanity thought we understood? That Tuesday morning began like any typical late summer day across northern Illinois. Teachers prepared bulletin boards inside empty classrooms for the upcoming academic year, while high school athletes ran drills beneath a hazy sky. Plainfield was a town accustomed to intense weather, a place where residents routinely waited out squalls in basements. Nobody expected this specific afternoon to rewrite meteorological records. Deep in the atmosphere, an unprecedented collision was taking shape. Sizzling surface temperatures clashed violently against an aggressive cold front, driving an explosive supercell rapidly across the region. Convective available potential energy spiked above 8,000 joules per kilogram. Catastrophe triggered early, yet the residents in the crosshairs went about their day, completely unaware of the atmospheric bomb ticking above them. By early afternoon, the National Weather Service issued a standard severe thunderstorm alert. No advanced tornado warning was issued, meaning outdoor sirens were not activated until the tornado was already tearing through the area. No blaring alarms interrupted the quiet suburban afternoon. Inside the Chicago forecast office, meteorologists found themselves relying on limited, aging equipment. Staring at the screens that still functioned, analysts spotted an unmistakable hook echo, a classic radar signature indicating strong mid-level rotation. However, torrential precipitation cloaked the twister completely, turning an immense cyclone into an undetectable weapon. Inside the newsrooms and weather stations, the calm professionalism of seasoned forecasters cracked under the sudden realization that this storm possessed apocalyptic potential. They understood the town of Plainfield was out of time. At that exact moment, the monstrous tornado slammed into Plainfield High School. Dozens of student athletes and faculty members occupied the campus, making final preparations for the looming fall semester. First indications of mortal danger arrived as a deafening, freight train roar vibrating through the corridors. A quick-thinking dean triggered the fire alarm, urgently corralling students into the main interior hallway, the sole reinforced space within the structure. Above them, ferocious winds peeled the gymnasium roof away, causing exterior brick walls to explode outward. Ferocious winds tore directly through the science wing, destroying the structure in seconds. When the roar subsided, every student sheltering in the main corridor miraculously survived. Tragically, science teacher Stephen Hunt did not. He occupied his classroom, arranging materials for the coming semester, right as the flying truck breached the wall. Custodian Pat Scowen also perished in the hallway debris. Moments later, around 3:30 a.m. p.m. The churning rotation unleashed destruction that defied human comprehension. Steel transmission towers snapped in half, while concrete blocks weighing over 2,000 pounds launched through the air, tearing directly into St. Mary Immaculate Catholic Church and its adjoining school. The system obliterated both structures simultaneously. Staff members inside the rectory possessed zero time to react to the collapsing ceiling. Principal Sister Mary Keenan, music teacher Gloria Sanchez, and Howard Hawes Jr. died instantly when dense brick and timber crashed down upon them. Rescue crews found the sanctuary leveled fully to its foundation, leaving only a silver cross swaying on a single wire. This fragile marker of survival stood over an erased neighborhood, surrounded by shattered pews. Plowing eastward, the storm carved a path of total ruin through populated residential subdivisions. Powerful suction forces sheared homes off their bolted foundations, sweeping debris away to leave bare floors. Moving rapidly across the terrain, the system ripped through the Crest Hill Lakes apartment complex at 3:38 p.m. These multi-story structures disintegrated into airborne splinters, while parked vehicles launched hundreds of yards into adjacent fields. When multi-story buildings shredded apart, numerous residents suffered severe injuries and were tossed into adjacent grounds. He crawled desperately through the mud to reach his little sister, Leslie, only to discover she had not survived. 8 residents lost their lives at the apartment complex as survivors emerged to find widespread destruction amidst the ruins. Shortly afterward, along Cedarwood Drive in Crest Hill, the Tempest intercepted a moving vehicle. Frank and Alita Riffel, a devoted elderly couple, navigated through blinding rain while driving their 2 grandchildren home from an afternoon swimming trip. Visibility plunged into total darkness, and relentless precipitation hammered the windshield so intensely that sightlines dropped to zero. Realizing the peril, Frank pulled the car onto the shoulder, where he and Alita instinctively covered the young children with their own bodies just as the twister engulfed them. Emergency responders eventually located the automobile tossed far off the pavement, its metal chassis torn apart. Frank and Alita gave their lives to absorb the fatal blows. Rescuers pulled their 2 grandchildren from the mangled wreckage, terrified but breathing, spared solely by the heroic protective actions of their grandparents. If you felt the gravity of those sacrifices, consider hitting subscribe. This channel investigates the historic storms that rewrote meteorological rules and exposed underlying gaps in our nation's infrastructure. We dive deep into archival records to bring you the truth. By the late afternoon, the violent tornado dissipated over the northern subdivisions of Joliet. It lifted back into the clouds after churning across the earth for 16 miles. What remained looked like an active war zone. Shredded timber and pulverized brick blanketed the area. Initially, authorities tallied the official casualty count at 28. That grim figure inevitably climbed. Young child Sarah Brower suffered critical head trauma when furious winds collapsed her family's residence. Paramedics rushed the toddler to a regional trauma center, hastily placing her on specialized life support equipment. Tragically, 2 days later on August 30th, her grieving parents faced the agonizing decision to disconnect the machines keeping her breathing. Loved ones buried Sarah wearing the tiny leotard purchased specifically for her first dance class scheduled later that week. Skies above Illinois had finally cleared, but the immense suffering continued to expand. Navigating the immediate aftermath proved exceptionally treacherous for first responders. A dense stench of leaking natural gas saturated the air, creating extreme explosion hazards across multiple city blocks. Over 65,000 utility customers lost electrical power, while 10,000 households discovered their landline telephones dead. Widespread accumulations of splintered lumber blocked major arteries, effectively trapping injured survivors and stalling emergency convoys. Large fire apparatus could not approach actively burning structures, forcing medical personnel to carry stretchers across muddy fields to reach wounded residents. Whole municipalities transformed into ad hoc triage zones where exhausted volunteers worked alongside professional rescue teams through the night, illuminated by portable generators. However, secondary hazards soon compounded the tragedy. Widespread concerns regarding potential looting compelled traumatized homeowners to guard their ruined properties in unstable conditions. One exhausted man succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning after running a generator indoors while watching over his shattered living room. Disaster persistently claimed victims even after the weather system departed. Official damage surveys commenced within 24 hours, bringing Dr. Ted Fujita directly into the disaster zone to spearhead the forensic investigation. Walking the shattered suburban tracks, Fujita documented extreme ground scouring where the intense suction had vacuumed topsoil off the earth, exposing bare bedrock. He meticulously analyzed the structural failures of solidly anchored buildings, noting how the directional scatter of debris indicated rotational velocities sitting at the uppermost limit of what his classification system could physically measure. Most surprisingly, Fujita highlighted the unprecedented climatological timing of this F5 tornado. Never before in recorded United States history had an F5 tornado materialized during August, a period traditionally characterized by weaker thunderstorms. He spent weeks analyzing the bending angles of corn stalks in adjacent agricultural fields to map the internal wind flow of the twister. His exhaustive post-storm analysis firmly established the 1990 Plainfield disaster as one of the most violent late-summer tornadoes in Midwestern history. If this detailed breakdown is providing value, take a quick moment to hit like on the video. Doing so genuinely helps the platform's algorithm recommend this documentary-style content to more viewers who need to understand these key past events. Exploring meteorology helps us prepare for tomorrow. Scrutiny regarding the catastrophic alert failure intensified dramatically, forcing government agencies to confront critical operational blind spots. Investigators determined that the National Weather Service's Chicago office operated that afternoon without modern Doppler radar technology, relying instead on older conventional radar equipment. Deprived of their advanced diagnostic tool, meteorologists relied on antiquated equipment that could not properly resolve the internal wind structures of the approaching supercell. This technological deficit meant warning systems essentially flew blind right as the atmosphere destabilized. The tempest's unusual northwest to southeast trajectory caught local spotters fully off guard as most Illinois twisters progressed toward the northeast. By the time frantic regional forecasters comprehended the scale of the emergency, the tempest had already flattened Plainfield. Because no advance tornado warning had been issued before the storm hit Plainfield, the localized warning system failed to alert residents in time. For devastated families searching through the rubble, that delay proved the localized communication infrastructure had fundamentally collapsed when they needed it most. Public outcry and investigations followed the bureaucratic breakdowns, with local communities fiercely demanding accountability from the National Weather Service regarding delayed public notifications. Federal judges eventually dismissed these high-profile cases by invoking the doctrine of sovereign immunity, a legal principle shielding government agencies from financial liability concerning discretionary duties. Those courtroom dismissals, however, did nothing to quell the simmering anger sweeping through the community. Activists forcefully argued that systemic negligence caused the tragedy, pointing out that extreme federal budget cuts and chronically outdated surveillance technology left whole suburban populations defenseless against nature's wrath. Recognizing the undeniable truth in these criticisms, the agency responded by continuing the national deployment of the WSR-88 NEXRAD Doppler radar network throughout the decade. This advanced grid utilized much better rotational detection algorithms, enabling meteorologists to identify threatening mesocyclones much earlier and issue life-saving bulletins faster. The grave human cost paid in northern Illinois ultimately served as the definitive catalyst for modernizing atmospheric surveillance across the continent. Physical reconstruction efforts mobilized almost instantaneously across the affected municipalities. Construction crews rebuilt Plainfield High School at a new site on Fort Beggs Drive, incorporating modern safety designs and interior storm shelter areas. Mary Immaculate Catholic Church rose from the ashes as well, utilizing modern architectural standards that featured dedicated emergency communication protocols. City planners mandated the demolition of the extensively damaged Crest Hill Lakes apartment complex, officially zoning the plot for single-family residences instead of high-density housing. Displaced survivors steadily repopulated their repaired subdivisions, driven not by the ease of returning to ruined streets, but rather out of a stubborn refusal to let the disaster dictate their futures. Leaving the area permanently felt like surrendering to the winds. Every subsequent August 28th, the town organizes solemn memorial gatherings at the specific locations where the greatest losses occurred. Inside the newly constructed St. Mary's Sanctuary, congregants prominently display the surviving Silver Cross, serving as a permanent reminder of everything the community lost and rebuilt. Legacy of this catastrophe altered professional meteorological procedures far beyond localized municipal zoning laws. Because the 1990 system successfully hid its destructive core within dense precipitation, scientists urgently developed stricter protocols for identifying rain-wrapped threats that evade standard visual confirmation. This urgent need for better data directly accelerated the integration of dual-polarization radar technology into the national grid. By transmitting both horizontal and vertical energy pulses, dual polarization allows modern analysts to determine the distinct shape and size of airborne particles, easily distinguishing between ordinary raindrops, dense hail, and the chaotic debris lofted by a hidden storm core. Implementing this sophisticated scanning method transformed how weather stations operate today, preventing countless fatalities during low-visibility squall lines that would have masked a twister under the older operational framework. The immense devastation forced the scientific establishment to confront a harsh reality. Possessing vast meteorological knowledge means truthfully nothing if forecasters lack the technological instruments required to see the danger. Decades later, during the late summer of 2025, the united communities of Plainfield, Crest Hill, and Joliet solemnly marked the 35th anniversary of the disaster through extensive public retrospectives and educational safety panels. Numerous survivors stepped up to share their harrowing personal accounts, with many older residents speaking into microphones for the very first time regarding the sheer terror they experienced that fateful afternoon. Leading atmospheric scientists from the NWS Romeoville Forecast Office joined forces with regional emergency dispatchers to host public educational workshops and safety presentations. Hundreds of local citizens attended these educational sessions, fully grasping the event's cultural weight. This collaborative presentation explicitly outlined the solid, multi-layered severe weather communication networks constructed directly in response to the operational blind spots exposed in 1990. Absorbing the painful lessons of that tragic Tuesday fundamentally wove storm awareness into the very fabric of the region's cultural identity. Evaluating the disaster through sheer statistics reveals over 350 injured residents and 470 obliterated single-family homes, ultimately generating over $390 million in inflation-adjusted damages. However, focusing solely on the math obscures the long-term emotional toll carried by the surviving population. Beyond the flattened structures, the disaster triggered an unprecedented mental health crisis across Will County. Clinical psychologists deployed to local community centers noted a sharp spike in post-traumatic stress symptoms, especially among the volunteer firefighters who spent grueling days extracting neighbors from the wreckage. Children who survived the afternoon winds frequently developed intense phobias of dark clouds, requiring years of specialized counseling to manage their paralyzing fear of thunderstorms. Local churches quickly transformed their basements into ongoing support group spaces, facilitating trauma counseling sessions that ran consistently for over a decade. Memorials to those lost now endure, carefully etched into polished granite plaques standing proudly in vibrant public parks that bloom over former debris fields. Modern schools stand tall, and bustling daily life has reclaimed the once shattered neighborhoods. Yet the psychological scars persist, remaining invisible to transient visitors but permanently etched into the minds of everyone who endured the roaring darkness. The defining narrative of the 1990 catastrophe centers on the resilient dignity of ordinary human courage. We find that enduring strength reflected through the immediate mobilization of neighborhood volunteers rushing toward active collapse zones, risking secondary structural failures to dig strangers out of the mud. Blue-collar workers abandoned their day jobs to operate heavy machinery, clearing shattered oak trees from blocked thoroughfares so ambulances could pass. Violent atmospheric anomalies possess the raw kinetic energy required to erase concrete foundations and bend steel beams, but they fully lack the capacity to dismantle communal solidarity or extinguish love. These affected municipalities rebuilt their infrastructure because resilient survivors actively refused to let a singular meteorological anomaly dictate their legacy. They made a collective choice to honor deep sacrifices and stride forward united. Coming together to light candles and read the names aloud, they continuously teach their children a key truth. While the most destructive forces of nature eventually dissipate, a community's active choice to protect and care for one another never truly ends. If the resilience shown in this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for taking the time to remember Plainfield.